Because she was ugly, the three most handsome men of the empire all wanted to marry her, but she didn't want any of them. She only wanted to live happily with her best friend forever, leaving the men utterly shocked. Her best friend was even more terrified and utterly hopeless after all. These men had gone to extreme lengths to win Chloe over. They even risked destroying the world by using a demon to devour her brother Phyllis's consciousness. For the sake of her sister, she willingly succumbed, and in the end, when she was about to wipe out her entire family, the three of them pretended to be saviors rescuing Chloe, and now she found herself becoming the love rival of these lunatics. Like many predecessors, Ailing accidentally transmigrated into a book. In her previous life, she had the superpower to attract the same sex. Because of this, she was always surrounded by girls, and this novel was her absolute favorite. She often cried out saying she wanted to take care of the female lead, Chloe. She never expected that one day she would actually transmigrate into it. Worse yet, she became a penniless supporting character burdened with 50 billion in debt, just when she was in utter despair. The angelic Chloe saved her and even used her superpowers to pay off all her debt. But in the original novel, her character was doomed to be killed by the male lead because of the female lead. She originally planned to get Chloe married off as soon as possible so she could stay far away from those dangerous people. But unexpectedly, she was confessed to in public. Now she was definitely doomed. Facing Chloe's overwhelming affection, Ailing really wished she could take a hint. After all, the crown prince looked like he was about to punch someone. Claudia, I hope you're joking. Otherwise, I'll have no choice but to kill this fragile little thing. As he spoke, his sharp fingers reached for Ailing, making a crisp sound. Chloe suddenly stood in front of her, exuding dominance. With me here, no one will hurt Ailing. The Duke of the Wind Cloak also joined the commotion, subtly pressuring Ailing to back off. But Chloe fiercely countered, completely ignoring her trembling, delicate little wife. Suddenly, a chill ran down her spine. She finally remembered there was one more. Sure enough, the Holy Knight was already preparing to attack, surrounded by these maniacs. Ailing felt her life was hanging by a thread. Fortunately, her brother arrived just in time. Only then did the chaos finally come to an end. Back home, Chloe cried like a mess. Those three claimed they loved her, but in reality, their so-called love felt more like an inescapable act of charity. Like barbarians, I will never marry any of them in this lifetime. It was only then that Ailing realized Chloe was just an ordinary girl too. And yet, knowing full well how awful these men were, she had still tried to push her best friend toward them just to save herself. She apologized for forcing Chloe, but Chloe didn't mind at all. As long as I can hug Ailing, all my troubles will disappear. Will you be my best friend forever? Chloe asked. Ailing smiled and happily agreed. Of course, she knew she couldn't escape death, she just didn't expect. The very next day, she was told she was about to die, and the one who came for her was the female lead's brother, Phyllis. Not only was he incredibly handsome, but he was also extraordinarily capable. He became the head of the magic department at just 20 years old. On top of that, he was a legendary Siscon, such a top-tier, rich and powerful man. Had actually appeared at Ailing's house today the moment she saw his smile. She instantly tensed up like a Lego figure. He thought Ailing was angry. She hurriedly reassured him that she would never be mad at such a handsome man, flashing a brilliant smile. His angelic appearance was almost too dazzling. She even felt like she could die without regrets. But unexpectedly, she actually was about to die. As it turned out, after Phyllis investigated, he discovered that the household maids had been bribed long ago, secretly feeding Ailing 100 pounds of poison. Horrified, she realized she was truly doomed. She asked how long she had left to live. Only half a day, but the scariest part was, there were several more groups of people trying to kill her. Thankfully, her brother took care of them all. Curious about how Phyllis handled it incorrectly, but the main focus now is that someone has been poisoned. Feeling wronged and preparing to leave a will, but didn't expect Phyllis to have an antidote. Reaching out, placing a hand in her palm, a warm green light spreads all over. During the treatment, still constantly thanking Irene because of her appearance, Chloe had been kidnapped since childhood. This made her life very unhappy, but fortunately Irene appeared. Now her younger sister has become much more cheerful, even insisting on bringing Irene back home. Looking at the man in front of her talking to himself, Irene suddenly had a bad feeling. Sure enough, hearing his gentle laughter, Miss Irene, would you be willing to accept my kidnapping? Quickly throwing herself into her best friend's arms after learning about Irene's situation. The once delicate and dependent best friend was now filled with killing intent, ready to drive people away. Fortunately, her brother reminded her in time, snapping Chloe back to her senses. The best friend gently comforted her. By the way, I also prepared a surprise for you. Holding the girl's hand, you will definitely like this gift. A giant chocolate waterfall and an array of exquisite desserts. Plus, a brand new carousel under the sunlight. Irene was so shocked her jaw nearly dislocated. This place was simply paradise. The siblings thought Aaron was dissatisfied. Anxiously, they asked for a chance to make it up, even planning to build an artificial river. They immediately went to buy materials. Aaron didn't understand the world of the rich. But such extravagance was too much for her, so she quickly reassured them that she was very happy. Chloe, however, thought she was just comforting them. How could she not know what her best friend liked? So Aaron bluntly stated, "My favorite thing is money. I also love all kinds of delicious food. And I love looking at beauties. My childhood dream was to be a rich, unemployed person." The next moment, she awkwardly knelt on the ground, thinking they would look down on her as useless. But Chloe was actually very happy she had salt and money. Even her brother was delighted since Aaron's ideals matched perfectly. Cute Aaron has always been valuable, so touched, tears streamed down. Monogamy is the best. That night she shared the good news with her younger brother. "I might end up living here forever, so you should move here after graduation." Even her best friend agreed. While they were talking, they ran into Phillies. Curious why he was still awake, turns out he wanted to discuss magic resistance. Previously, to prevent Chloe's tragic fate, he had begged Phillies to increase his magic resistance. He thought his unreasonable request would get him scolded, but Phillies agreed immediately. Now he wanted to ask why, feeling guilty, he used prophecy as an excuse. Unexpectedly, Phillies actually believed it after all. It was a choice he would indeed make. Even if he had to be forgotten by everyone, as long as his sister could live, that was enough. However, demon possession doesn't allow complete clarity even with higher magic resistance. One would still be devoured halfway, while not as violent as in the prophecy. It would still be hard to control one's desires. Suddenly realizing demons might not be that scary. Even humans have desires to vent, but in essence, humans and demons are different. After all, demons can kill on a whim. Three voices echoed in his mind. Could those three have already become demons? I understand what you mean. No, you don't understand. I want you to live well. Not to die tragically like in the prophecy, so will you listen to me? Of course I will. Demons stimulate human desires. But I also don't want you to get hurt, so is your desire to hurt me? He didn't directly answer the girl's question, only hoping that when the time came she would leave him. However, the girl strongly refused. "I have a good idea. If your desire is to bully me, then you should just release it in advance." After saying this, she trembled, waiting for the man's attack, but Felix chose to refuse. Seeing the unpleasant expression on his face, she still tried to persuade him, saying he might harm his body by holding back. Who would have thought that in the next moment, her head was forcefully pressed onto his leg. His rock-hard thigh felt like she was resting on a stone. Although it was really uncomfortable, Felix had no intention of getting up, under his gentle pats. She eventually fell into a deep sleep and woke up with a swollen face. As soon as she opened her eyes, she saw her teary-eyed best friend, who was so scared she thought something bad had happened. It turned out she just wanted Ailing to lie on her lap too, and hurriedly told her brother to go to work. She wanted to have some alone time with Ailing, but unexpectedly her skipping class was exposed. If she didn't take class seriously, Ailing would be disappointed, so she rushed forward and hugged Ailing tightly. Crying, she grabbed her best friend's hand and promised she would study seriously. Hearing that her best friend still liked her, she immediately became happy and wanted to hug her. Suddenly, an interrupting cough sounded. It turned out to be her rich father who had arrived earlier. But Felix quickly forbade him from speaking, afraid he would wake up a certain someone who was still sound asleep. "Not son-in-law, daughter-in-law, please have a private chat with me." Ailing sensed trouble. After all, she had stolen his child's heart. Upon entering the room, she quickly apologized for causing bad rumors about Chloe. But the father unexpectedly thanked Ailing, saying his daughter's happiness was the most important thing to him. Strange, then why did he seek her out? It turned out to be about sealing the engagement with the crown prince. Just thinking about that guy irritated her. He kept pestering her even after being rejected. But since he's royalty, I hope you can help appease him a little. Chloe is too innocent. I'm afraid she'll go too far. Ailing reassured him, saying she would definitely protect her wife. Unexpectedly, her father-in-law looked at her with complete disdain, despite his attempt to control his expression. But it was already too late though. To Ailing, this wasn't a big deal at all. After all, she was a woman committed to monogamy. Soon she went out with Chloe. When her wealthy best friend treated them, she didn't hesitate to order every dessert on the menu. She had always dreamed of doing this, even though the prices were ridiculously high. But her best friend didn't mind at all. "Sis is rich, order whatever you want, it's fine." It was supposed to be a happy afternoon tea, but then they overheard some people mocking Ailing, calling her shameless. Chloe's good mood was instantly ruined and she called over the waiter. "Excuse me, can I book the entire venue?" But after learning that reservations were required in advance, "Then I'll just buy the whole store, please kick those people out." The so-called ugly outcast, abandoned by family, was now being pampered by her rich best friend. First, she custom-made a paradise for eating, drinking, and entertainment just for her. Then, since Ailing loved desserts, she even planned to buy every dessert shop in the city. In the end, Ailing stopped her, though she didn't understand why. But as long as her wife was happy, Chloe was willing to do anything. She bought her favorite cotton candy and they laughed and chatted. He even shoved his disgusting big face closer, instantly making her angry enough to want to hit him. Of course, she wouldn't forget to protect her wife. You greasy second-rate scumbag. Aren't you afraid of dirtying other people's eyes? Your ugly face is basically a biochemical weapon. Can you disappear immediately? The fat guy was almost enraged to death. He reached out, ready to teach the girl a lesson, but the next moment a group of men in black appeared. In an instant, they heavily surrounded the fat man. He looked at them in confusion, just about to kneel and beg for mercy. But he was directly grabbed by the men in black and eventually dragged away like a dead pig. This scene happened to be witnessed by the blonde-haired prince, who originally wanted to find an excuse to strike up a conversation. Instead, he received Chloe's disgusted look, and everything was going exactly according to Ailing's plan. In order to make those three lunatics give up on Chloe, he had been secretly planning for 3 months. He finally came up with a brilliant idea to make those three understand that to Chloe they were completely useless, but despite all the careful planning, he underestimated their thick skin. It was tougher than city walls. Not only did they casually greet Chloe, they even blamed him, asking why he had been avoiding them. The two best friends were practically speechless. They really wanted to beat him up, but instead, they told him to take care of his fiancée. Who would have thought that the blonde-haired prince would loudly confess his love in public, declaring, "No matter how many wives I marry, you will always be my one true love." Hearing this, Ailing felt second-hand embarrassment so badly she wanted to disappear, but then the focus suddenly shifted to her. He accused her of being the root of everything. What exactly did you do to my Chloe? But Ailing felt that her best friend had simply found himself again. He was no longer the timid child from before. Instead, he was bravely chasing his own happiness. The blonde prince kept saying he loved Chloe, yet he refused to let him do what he wanted. Ailing rolled her eyes in annoyance. "I'll agree to whatever you want just as long as you never come near me again." Only then did the prince realize something was wrong, his eyes turning sharp and murderous. Chloe continued to fiercely protect his wife. "You little blonde punk, don't push your luck." He shook off the prince and turned to leave, thinking he had finally shaken him off for good. But who would have thought that National Day was coming up soon, and all the nobles were required to attend the state celebration. His best friend's family was not only drowning in wealth, but had more money than they could ever spend. So there was no way to refuse the invitation, but that also meant running into the annoying blonde prince again. Just then he received a call from his younger brother. After answering, he was shocked to learn that his own family had also been invited. Even without thinking too hard, he could tell that guy was definitely up to something, but Ailing wasn't about to sit back and do nothing. Late at night, she dressed in black and quietly slipped out of the mansion. She thought no one was around, but suddenly a familiar voice startled her. Belize was still awake. Surprised, he asked where she was going. He offered to take her there, but Ailing immediately refused. She had to go alone to meet someone. Belize assumed it was a man, his expression instantly turning ice cold, but when she shakily explained it was a woman, and that she could protect herself, his angelic smile suddenly returned. He no longer stopped her from leaving, but handed her a magic stone. "If you're ever in danger, be sure to break this stone." Only then did he feel at ease letting her go find her target. Currently, the Empire had two major secret organizations. One was the chaos-driven system controlled by the purple-haired Duke, and the other was the intelligence-gathering group known as Selechim. Ailing's target was the beautiful leader of Selechim, a woman who had suffered misfortune in her childhood. So since childhood, she had been extremely deprived of love. Ailing took advantage of this. She sincerely accompanied her, listened to her heart, and combined with her natural charm for childlike innocence, successfully captured the heart of the beautiful older sister, though it wasn't exactly as she had imagined. But that didn't affect their pure relationship. Every time she saw her sister, Ailing was overjoyed. With just a slight beckoning of her finger, she would pounce into her arms like an excited puppy, eager to drink with her sister. It was just a little embarrassing, as the leader of an intelligence organization. Of course, she knew about Ailing's recent situation. "You may be pitiful, but I won't personally help you. However, I can share some information. The purple-haired guy previously came to buy intel on you. Strangely, all he asked about were your preferences and likes." Although Ailing was puzzled, the more urgent matter was the royal ball. "I need some intel or I might end up buried there." Facing her adorable little sister's request, the older sister had no reason to refuse. Soon, National Day arrived, and in preparation for the ball, Chloe bought out every clothing store in the empire just to find the best outfit for his wife. But Ailing was exhausted and knew she had to stop him. She boasted that she would look good in anything, even as the sales assistant stared in shock. Glaring, she threatened the salesperson to agree, but they still firmly shook their head. Tears of frustration welled up when Felix suddenly appeared, complimenting her, saying she was too beautiful to choose from. It was as if an angel had descended. She quickly asked her brother to talk some sense into their little sister. But the look in the man's eyes before he left gave him a bad feeling. Watching him excitedly join the discussion was this angelic brother actually betraying him. He even used his abilities to make the sales assistant actively join the praise squad. Indeed, this was a pragmatic world. That night they arrived at the venue by carriage. The angelic siblings stepped out first, their exquisite evening attire. And even their hair seemed to glow. Their grand entrance was all for one person. Ailing felt troubled this would only make her more nervous. He gently held the girl's hand. "We will always protect you." Faced with whispers from the crowd, she nervously gripped her dress. "Their words hold no value, don't pay them any mind. Otherwise, we'd be as ugly as they are." The siblings were always like this. Supporting her time and time again, what was supposed to be a warm outing was suddenly ruined by the blonde troublemaker who deliberately separated the three of them into different palace halls. It was obviously intentional, but fortunately, the siblings had crafted pure gold compasses. As long as they were opened, they could locate each other, just as they were planning how to deal with the blonde troublemaker. A knock suddenly sounded at the door. When she opened it, she saw a man sitting on the windowsill. His greasy face was reflective. Feeling secondhand embarrassment, she instantly turned into a Lego figure, spun around, and declared he had the wrong person. The man, desperate to stop her, shouted that he had something important to say. After clearing his throat, he suddenly started confessing his love. Was he insane, watching this overly dramatic love confession? Something about it felt oddly familiar. Wasn't this just a salesperson's tactic? Instantly switching into rejection mode, she declared, "I'm not buying, I have no money." She turned around and casually waved goodbye, an expert at refusing sales pitches. Unexpectedly, the man's expression darkened as he forcefully grabbed Ailing's wrist. He was determined to make Ailing be with him, his grip tightening with each passing moment. One look at this guy and it was obvious he had bad intentions. Normally, this would be a perfect moment for a hero to save the damsel. But Ailing never played by the rules. She aimed at his weak spot and delivered a flying kick. The pain was so intense he could hardly believe it. He quickly turned around and fled the scene. Praying that his equipment was still functional, Ailing suddenly found herself feeling troublesome. Suddenly there was a loud *slap*, just as she was about to apologize. The next moment she saw a familiar figure. Felix was already laughing like crazy. Why was he here? It turned out he had been worried about Ailing, but now that worry seemed unnecessary. Holding her hand, he activated healing magic. Ailing anxiously tried to explain. But he just smiled indulgently. "I was actually planning to break that guy's hands, you know. But since you handled it, he got off easy." Then he invited her for tea. And of course, he had her favorite Western-style egg tarts, but while they were happily enjoying themselves, a shadowy figure watched them from a distance, an ordinary, forgettable background character. Yet every day, thousands of people confessed to her. Even-side characters were forming groups to propose. It was obviously the crown prince's doing, whether they were noble or just rich. How could they possibly compete with these two siblings? Besides, the background characters had terrible tempers. Just because Ailing rejected a confession, one of them actually insulted her in public. It was getting really annoying. "For a cute girl like me, isn't it normal to have no interest in you?" Furious and humiliated, he was about to lash out when suddenly someone called Ailing's name. Seeing that it was the beautiful Miss Chloe, the man instantly tried to gain her attention. But Chloe completely ignored him and instead presented Ailing with a carefully prepared bouquet. "These flowers only bloom in spring. I specially picked them from the Crown Prince's greenhouse." Ailing was so startled she nearly dropped the flowers, breaking into a cold sweat. Turning to glare at the man, Chloe asked, "Can I take Ling away now?" "But I haven't even finished. If Ling gets heatstroke because of you, I'll twist your head off." That shut him up for good. Finally, they had their precious alone time. Chloe even gifted her a personally embroidered handkerchief. "Is this a spider?" Chloe's face immediately fell. "Or maybe the sun?" No, that was wrong too. She quickly brainstormed, considering the pattern and the flowers she had just received. It must be a flower. This time she finally got it right. It took a lot of effort to appease her rich best friend, but then she received a death bouquet *. And of course, another threat from the crown prince. What an infuriating man. "No matter what tricks he pulls, no one can compete with my commitment to monogamy." Finally, they arrived at the grand banquet, a massive golden dragon. Its dazzling light filled Ailing's eyes with excitement as it roared. The entire hall was illuminated. She eagerly shared her joy with her best friend. But just then her older brother, still half asleep, stretched lazily. Looking at his drowsy little sister, he said, "I'll take Chloe back to her room first." Of course, Ailing was more than happy to let them go once the siblings left. She could sneak off to find help, specifically the novel's infamous villainess Erica. She tried to quietly approach her, but before she could even find the beautiful older sister, she ran into him, her scumbag father. She tried to pretend she didn't recognize him and slip away. But he still noticed and loudly called out her name. She was baffled. Why would a man who sold his own daughter still try to reach out to her? "Mister, I don't even know you. Why are you acting this way toward a stranger?" Her scumbag father was enraged. "I raised you for so many years. No matter how you look at it, I am still your father." The crowd around them began murmuring. "So what do you want this time?" Turns out they wanted Ailing to get married again. Felix was curious about the other party's identity and found out it was Count Thibaut. Chloe instantly exploded with anger. "That guy could be your grandfather." Hearing Ailing say they could use this situation, he immediately understood everything. "It's that wild dog crown prince causing trouble again, right?" But her brother disagreed. Calling him a wild dog is too much of a compliment. He's just garbage from a pile of ruins. It was strange her brother was surprisingly calm this time. Turns out the Count's country was separated from the Empire by a sea. And in the open sea, no country had jurisdiction, so he could just dump that guy into the ocean. Of course, he was just joking. Suddenly, he thought of having their father adopt Ailing. He was instantly rejected by his brother. "If she becomes my sister, how can I marry her?" She quickly stopped the sibling argument, saying she actually had a better plan. Back at the banquet halls, she had already made contact with Erica. Even though it was just eye contact, she believed Erica remembered her. Sure enough, Erica didn't refuse her invitation. She met the beautiful red-haired lady again. Even though it was their first official meeting, Erica knew everything about Ailing. "Gaining the love of those two siblings is impressive. I even heard he plucked the royal flower for you." But does the flower really want to be plucked? Ailing wondered. "Flowers have their own will too," Erica immediately refuted her. "Flowers don't need such things, they just need to be beautiful, but if they couldn't live freely even once, wouldn't life be too regretful?" This statement completely moved Erica. As the only daughter of her family, she had been a tool since birth. They used any means necessary to make her the crown princess. In the original story, to secure her status, she constantly made things difficult for Chloe, while the crown prince used her pregnancy to make Chloe even more dependent on him until, in the end, she was completely eliminated. Her entire life had been one of exploitation, but Ailing understood. Erica had no real interest in power or status. She was just a beautiful puppet controlled by her family. So, as someone who had lost her freedom, she must have been curious about what the flower truly wanted. "If you're willing to help me, I'll tell you the flowers will." Faced with such a unique Ailing, Erica finally agreed to cooperate. Soon at the Imperial Council meeting, Erica's father proposed the marriage. Although Count Thibaut's country was small, they should still choose a match of equal standing. Wasn't this marriage a bit inappropriate? Hearing this, the others all voiced their agreement. The crown prince nearly went mad with rage. He assumed it was Duke Fumpi's doing, seeing the Duke feign innocence, and even say he would personally select beauties to send over. The prince was sure it was his scheme. He verbally agreed, but after the meeting ended, immediately made a move. He scared the Duke so much that he instinctively dodged. "Damn you, why are you interfering?" And now Daffy Lassuin was pressuring him too. This time, he was really being falsely accused. "I would never do something this stupid if I wanted to interfere. I'd just have her become Chloe's adopted sister. After all, Count Lane is infamous for spoiling his daughter. If Chloe likes her, he'll definitely host the wedding. Besides that, Erica isn't simple. Maybe she has the ability to charm people. People like her can sway hearts with just one sentence. Humans are especially vulnerable to emotional manipulation. She's like a flawless masterpiece, making people want to destroy that perfection. But for now, let's focus on solving your problem. I have a plan." "Do you want to hear it?" The girl just smiled normally. But it made the novel's female protagonist completely fall for him. Even the handsome male protagonist who kissed her became pitiful and begged for a hug. The best friend was both angry and worried. "You don't have another dog, do you?" She laughed and quickly denied it. "You're the most precious to me." Suddenly, the older brother asked for a commitment. "Of course, you're mine too." Unexpected words that had nothing to do with her father. Sure enough, they were preparing to call the son-in-law, but the brother thought he wouldn't be able to say it. Unwilling to accept it, he tried to say something but couldn't finish the awkward sentence. Embarrassed, he shouted, "The banquet is important." Who would have thought that the Count had a cute side? But as soon as they entered the banquet hall, they were startled to see Erica actually approaching. She invited Ailing to stay with her, and Chloe quickly helped her best friend, firmly stating that she wouldn't, but unexpectedly she was rejected face to face. But she smiled very happily because the girl was simply too cute. To make up for the regret, "Can I call you Ailing?" her best friend refused 100 times. Surprised by the unexpected plot, the two beautiful women were actually competing for her. Thinking about how to ease the tension, her best friend would never back down. Excited, Chloe hugged her tighter, and Ailing gradually had trouble breathing. She woke up again, now back at the Count's mansion. Looking at the maid nearby, she couldn't understand. Why does she like me so much even though she serves me every day? It was as if she were a pet everyone kept, though it didn't seem much different. Suddenly, Felix entered with some bad news. That closed-off Duke wanted to see Ailing, but she had already refused immediately. After all, that guy controlled the chaos poison, and from any angle, he was not a good person. Although Ailing didn't like him either, in order to save Chloe, she had to meet the Duke, unable to stop her. Felix had no choice but to go with her. What could Felix be up to? It turned out Chloe was showing off that he'd hugged Ailing, but she had never been hugged. "You can hug me too," she suddenly felt flustered. Unconsciously, she rushed forward. How could she resist such a handsome face? Hugging Ailing, they walked out, reminding her not to walk off with strangers. After saying that, he smiled and asked for a kiss, making Ailing's cheek flush. Embarrassed, she struggled but couldn't escape, quickly arriving at the Duke's mansion. As soon as they opened the door, they saw the Duke surrounded by smoke. The pungent smell in the room almost made Ailing choke to death. Fortunately, Felix quickly purified the air with a dark expression, extinguishing the incense. "Oh no, what should I do? I just lit it." Frustrated, he reached out, and the cold air purified the whole room. He casually threw away the weird incense. "I just want to get along with you." "Then please don't light incense anymore. It's strange, the other young ladies liked it." It's a shame, though he could be considered handsome. The smell of that incense made his mouth smell awful. The sly Duke was a bit stunned, then smiled and said he didn't mind. "But how can you come to like me?" Helpless, he faced the other party's thick skin. "I can only bluntly tell the truth. Just stay away from me and I'll thank the heavens. I decided not to beat around the bush. The purpose of me coming to see you this time is to make you give up on Chloe. After all, he will never like you." But the Duke chose not to accept this. He only wanted to have him. Believing that sooner or later he would win his heart, Felix really couldn't hold back anymore. "If you dare to harm my sister, I will make you regret being alive." Ignoring Felix's threat, the focus shifted back to Ailing. "I heard you're someone who really likes money, although the Raven family has a lot of money. I have even more money. How about considering me instead?" A decisive rejection. "In this lifetime, I only love those two. No matter what happens, I will never regret leaving the Duke's residence." Worried Felix might be upset, but he almost laughed like a fool. Just now, watching the Duke's back, he couldn't be happier. "We don't need Ailing to serve us. As long as you're happy, that's the best result for us." Soon, it was Ailing's birthday. The wealthy siblings made a flashy entrance, and before they could react, they were already buried under a pile of gifts. It was only then that Ailing remembered it was her birthday. She looked at Chloe, who was excited, and thanked her siblings for taking care of her so much. But there was something even more important. As outstanding children of a magical family, Felix had extraordinary magical talent, and Chloe was a rare genius elf master. Yet she had never been able to sign a contract with an elf, and all of this was because of that madman, the illusionary elf Nixalis, because he wanted to destroy Chloe's heritage. The kind-hearted elves prevented Chloe. Now the only solution was to find a high-ranking elf from the human world and use human advantages to sign a contract with him. Ailing hadn't eaten or drunk for 3 months and finally narrowed the search to Kali Island. Based on all the information gathered, this place definitely had the elf we were looking for. Unfortunately, entry is now banned by the merchant group, and we're troubled about how to get in. The wealthy siblings didn't understand just buy it and take it over, right? This would be a good excuse to let us vacation there and search for the elf. What a lucky friend to have a rich friend like this. It's like a 2.5-year blessing. Yet Ailing wasn't satisfied and asked her best friend how to communicate with men. Suddenly, she had a bad feeling. "Did you like someone?" After learning that the person was pretty good, she was once again shocked, her jaw almost dropping. She went crazy, wanting to know who the jerk was, but was suddenly interrupted by Felix. It turned out her mother had called for her, and helplessly she had to get up and leave. After giving some instructions, she had to watch her sister leave with a smile. Finally, it was just the two of them. Ailing immediately delivered the good news. Kali Island has already been bought. It only cost 80 billion. But Felix didn't care about that. She only wanted to know who that person was. Looking at the man's smiling face, her heart fluttered again. Stammering, she said the second prince's name and firmly pulled him into the swimming ring. "So Ailing, do you want to get close to the second prince?" She had a sea king's face, but in reality, she was a pure love warrior. She had adhered to chastity for 30 years just to offer her perfect self to the girl. Who would have thought the other party actually had someone they liked, so ailing? Do you like the second prince? His black eyes were filled with chilling coldness. Flustered, she explained she only wanted to win her over, and hearing a satisfactory reply, her expression instantly softened and she lovingly gave a head pat. In order to prevent you from being abducted by someone else, let's go formally meet my father first. Of course, it's not for marriage, but to inform the count about the prophecy. After explaining the cause and effect, the count nearly died from anger. The Grand Imperial Crown Prince is actually going to destroy the world because of a woman. And he even dared to release Sister Layla. She's the legendary Great Demon. Felix, on the other hand, remained calm. He comforted them, saying everything would be fine. If anyone is angry, it would be him who must sacrifice himself. You must know, once you accept the demon's power, whether you live or die, you'll be labeled as a heretic. Even the entire family would be buried with you, but Felix had already planned ahead. They didn't know that I had already raised my magical resistance, and when the time comes, I can fake my death to escape. Of course, the count gave him a severe beating, looking at Felix with pain. Can't you take better care of yourself? Once you really fake your death successfully, you will only be able to hide like a ghost in the dark. But Felix didn't care about that. He was a selfish man. As long as you all can survive, that's enough for me. Ailing wasn't satisfied with that. Perhaps they could think of another way. Like killing those 3 people right now. As expected, Felix strongly opposed this. Let's first help the boy treat his wounds. She suddenly remembered he could use healing magic. Let Felix treat himself. The next moment, the distance between them instantly closed. But I want you to help me with my wound. Her heart was shy, pounding hard. Just treat the wounds well and don't talk to me, but she still felt uneasy in her heart. Even at night in her dreams, she saw the scene of Felix's family being destroyed. Those red eyes, combined with closed, desperate tears, instantly scared him awake from the dream. Though he had already made all the preparations, he still didn't know if the result could be changed, especially after meeting Chloe. Listening to the girl talk about her plans for the future, he felt he shouldn't hide all this. Chloe, I need to tell you something. You must stay calm and listen to me till the end. Soon, he received a letter from the Crown Prince, pretending to be relaxed as he comforted Ailing. I'll be back soon, he said, as if it were just a normal outing. A huge thunderclap rang through the night sky. At that moment, inside the abandoned castle, Felix was being crushed underfoot. His body was in a miserable state with demonic relics stuck in him. The more he resisted the demon's purification, the more excited the Duke became. Even the Crown Prince couldn't stop it. In that moment, a magic spell struck the Duke's ankle. I can't believe you can still use magic. He turned and asked the paladin for healing, but was ruthlessly rejected by his companion. No choice. Lighting the cigarette in his hand, just obediently wait for death, he pinched Felix's chin. He shoved an 82-year-old cigar into his mouth. This can relieve your pain. You should make good use of this time to leave a final glance for your family. Watching the backs of those leaving until the door was closed, Felix's eyes flashed with cold light. For the first time, he was so happy. It was after killing himself using the substitute king's doll, successfully completing the fake death plan covered in tomato sauce. He immediately rushed to Ailing's room under the demon's coaxing. He stretched out his claw filled with desire, but just before touching her, it turned into a gentle head pat. I'm back, Ailings. He squeezed her cheek hard to confirm he wasn't dreaming. Finally seeing the boy in front of her, she was instantly scared and started touching everywhere. Little did she know he was desperately holding back, even though he was only in his 20s. He was able to withstand the demon's devouring power, calmly lighting the cigar in his hand. He forcefully pulled out the shoulder wound, even though blood was spurting out. Yet he remained calm, leaning against the wall, though the demons in his mind were too much. Seeing that Felix ignored her, the girl directly smashed her glasses. I'm really fed up. You should just continue sleeping peacefully. She then realized she had been tricked. The man actually wanted to seal her with his body. But he still underestimated the power of the demons. Layla, the symbol of love and desire, interrupted. Whether it was the angry Aileen or the caring Aileen's, their desires would be infinitely magnified as the demon's voice kept coaxing her. The rationality in her mind continued to break down, and her expression began to change. Grabbing Aileen's shoulder, he said, please leave my room. I'm really dangerous right now. He didn't dare look at the girls. Unexpectedly, her hand was pulled, and even though hell lay ahead, she said, I'll stay with you. His face turned red, nearly losing control. He forcefully shook off Aileen's hand. Please leave quickly. Felix looked at her in disbelief. Eventually, she left the room, feeling defeated, waiting for the door to close. Finally, he relaxed and lay in bed, his endurance so strong that even the demon muttered, beast. By the next morning, the demon urged the boy to possess Aileen. She could use Felix's strength, and with her thousands of years of experience, True love starts with possession. She immediately showed a disgusted expression. But it must be said, demons are truly mysterious, despite his injuries from yesterday. Today he was fully healed, even his abs had grown a few more blocks. But so what, the demon was just an old transformation. He got dressed and was about to go out but saw an unexpected scene. Aileen was actually sleeping at the door, so close, and gently asked her to return to her room. By the way, remember to lock the door, he said, as the cold rain instantly began to clean the surroundings. Was this caused by the demon? Felix seemed to have become fiercer. And more importantly, he had become so incredibly sexy. He confirmed his injuries again but unexpectedly slipped underfoot. He was about to fall hard but Felix grabbed him just in time. However, the force was too strong and he hurt the girl's wrist, leaving behind imprints from their touch. Seeing Felix pull away in fear, the girl hurriedly said she was fine. But Felix knew his own strength and Aileen's wrist might be fractured. Even if the girl didn't care, Felix was terrified. One day he might deeply hurt Aileen and his eyes welled up with guilt. I know you don't want me to get hurt, but I also want to protect you. Felix, I just want you to know that whatever you do, I won't mind. The well-known cannon fodder girl unexpectedly captured the main character's heart. Just a kind smile made the boy's face turn red and his heart race. If you knew what I wanted, you'd be scared. Curious, she wondered what his desire could be, not to mention possibly wanting to hit her. Suddenly, a severe cough, she wanted to approach to check. But he shouted, "Don't come near," explaining that it was just the demon's rejection response. Then, as if nothing had happened, he left, and when he returned, he was holding a 40-meter-long sword because of the demon's presence. Felix can no longer use magic, but fortunately she won't die for now. If I do something you dislike, this sword will protect you well. Finally feeling at ease, she approached Ailing after a night of fermenting. The entire empire knew of Felix's death, and she wanted to report peace to her family as soon as possible. Looking at her worried younger sister, her eyes were full of tenderness. She rushed towards her with concern and tenderness on her face. Finally, it turned into a heavy slap. Your birth control is very good. I heard people are going to hold a memorial for you. Should I congratulate you? She could no longer control her emotions, though she knew this was the best outcome. But why must everyone bear their own pain? Chloe's suffering was heartbreaking. But now the most important thing was the funeral. At present, Felix was pretending to be dead. Absolutely cannot let those three notice something unusual. She wanted her best friend to perform a fake cry. But looking at her poor acting, she decided not to make things difficult for Chloe. Maybe try feeling angry instead. Felix would bear everything alone. Just as they were discussing acting, the trio suddenly appeared. As the ones responsible for everything, the three still had the audacity to speak. What was surprising was that all three followed the funeral etiquette. Of course, the most surprising part was Chloe. He tightly clenched his fist. Under Ailing's shocked gaze, he delivered a heavy punch to the prince. Immediately, the prince spat out red tomato juice and fell to the ground in disbelief. Facing Chloe's fury, he not only blocked the hand of his subordinate trying to help, but also smiled perversely. Finally, you noticed me. Now, even if I throw you into the dungeon, no one will criticize me, right? Even if you despise me now. I don't care, I just hope you remember today. Otherwise, you'll soon lose the real person again. She could feel the hostility around her, especially the Saint Knight's sinister gaze. It made her feel extremely uncomfortable. What do you want to say? I just think killing you is very easy, so please don't force me to act. Duke Fang also got involved, but unfortunately you didn't see King Felix's expression. Although he usually appears noble, he hides an unspeakable secret. That is, his lust for you is an obsession with his lover's body. Ailing was really angry. He's already dead. Do you still want to insult him like this? Hearing the others' indifferent laughter, Ailing wanted Chloe to punch him again. She stopped paying attention to the three of them after a brief mental struggle. There were many people at the ceremony, and everyone was lamenting Felix's death. But Ailing was looking for another man, the Empire's second prince said. After some internal conflict, she finally grabbed the man's sleeve. Could we find a place to talk? Surprised, he did not refuse. Soon they arrived at a deserted rooftop, though my character isn't great. I didn't expect you to be so frivolous. Your husband just left and now you're looking for me to cheat. Ailing coldly glared at the brat. What are you talking about? He directly stated his purpose. I sought you out for cooperation. I will make you a useful person and find meaning for your life. In the original world, the second prince, unable to watch Chloe suffer, voluntarily helped him escape the palace, though he was eventually killed after having his heart ripped out. But this was a choice he had already made. He had been searching for the meaning of life. Therefore, Ailing believed he would accept her proposal this time. In order to fight against the three closed-off male protagonists, Chloe must become stronger. The group discussed going to Kali Island to find elves, thinking it would be a fun trip with their best friends. Little did they know, this trip was exceptionally dangerous, requiring constant outfit changes to avoid attention. Furthermore, in order to make a contract with the elves, they needed more magical potions. Curious, they tried making some themselves, quickly sending over a box for Felix to taste. The moment he drank it, he instantly felt like he had been poisoned. Realizing it was made by Irene, he quickly changed his expression and praised her, saying it was very good. But the side effects were strong, so he suggested she shouldn't drink it, pretending he expressed that Irene was very talented. "If you're willing, I could be your private teacher," he said, though he seemed reluctant to accept. But everything about Felix belonged to Irene, so he pleaded, "Please don't take away my happiness." Eventually, she shyly agreed, but her gaze gradually lowered. She happened to see his broad chest muscles and remembered his handsome appearance. Her face instantly turned red, almost exploding with embarrassment. Later, when night came, because of the devil's side effects, Felix's temperature soared to 100 degrees. As his consciousness blurred, the devil's power crept in. When he opened his eyes again, his beloved girl was right in front of him. The deep desires buried in his heart exploded at that moment. The seemingly innocent, good neighbor was actually full of perverse possessiveness toward her. Unfortunately, the girl was as stiff as a wooden plank and regarded his burning desire as a plague. The ambiguous atmosphere instantly cooled, faced with the girl's self-righteousness. He could only lie down helplessly and sigh. Fortunately, his body soon recovered. But recalling the scene in his dream, he still didn't dare to be alone with Aelin. Soon the day to depart for Kali Island arrived, and the 5 siblings bought a train. Chloe was very happy at the thought of going to a place that was remote and poor, where there might barely be any people. He was excited, having never been to such a poor place before. Too excited, he easily became sleepy, so he got up to rest. Felix awkwardly covered her mouth with her hand because for her, Aelin's scent was sweet and enticing. She got up to change carriages. But unexpectedly, Aelin suddenly grabbed her sleeve and asked, "Can you stay and accompany me?" The physical contact made her heart race, and she couldn't control her temperature or height. Looking at the girl so close, she tried to maintain composure and took a deep breath. "Behave," Aelin said, and Felix immediately jerked her hand away. She turned and walked toward the train carriage, and as she watched Felix leave, Aelin suddenly recalled the Duke's words. Could Felix really want to possess her? Imagining intimate moments between the two of them, she realized she didn't mind it. No longer hesitating, she stood up and chased after him, grabbing his hand with force. "Since you've made me get used to your presence, you have to be responsible for me." She lifted his trembling hand and asked, "Now please pet my head." Unexpectedly, Felix forcefully shoved her away, and with one punch he smashed the wall. Although the scene was terrifying, Aelin would never give up. She had no choice but to reluctantly surrender, but this gave Aelin a chance to ask the doubts in her heart. "Do you want to kill me?" "Of course not." "Then do you want to break my limbs and torture me?" "No, of course not." "So it's fine then," but she worried that she might destroy Aelin. Even if you can destroy walls, people aren't so easily harmed. Now her body temperature is even hotter than when she had a 100-degree fever. And this sweet sensation is like an enticing poison. They quickly reached the harbor but were told that they could not set sail. Right now, Kari Island is very dangerous. If you don't want to die, don't go. Ever since Kari Island was buried, anyone who gets close to the island will perish. Erin was completely stunned because she was the one who buried the island back then. She even had the caravan members board the island early to check, but she never expected it would lead to their deaths. At this moment, her stomach growled loudly, feeling like she wasn't even human anymore. The next moment, a sandwich was shoved into her mouth, encouraging Erin to survive because there's hope. But with no ship, how could they get to the island? "Then we'll just buy a ship ourselves. And those people you hired rely on us. We will definitely find the elf." Hearing her best friend's comfort, Erin's mood immediately improved a lot. But who would have thought a seagull, not knowing what was going on, snatched the sandwich from her hand. Her sadness instantly disappeared, and all she wanted was to beat that bird up. But her physical strength was too poor, and she soon collapsed on the beach, exhausted. However, she unexpectedly saw a familiar face. It was Anthony from the caravan. Felix heard the noise and came over to check, seeing that the other party was seriously injured. She proactively carried the boy on her back to treat him and asked about the others in the caravan. Although not very sure they should still be alive, she remembered everything had gone smoothly at the beginning. But at some point, the nautical compass started spinning wildly. The thousands-of-ton ship was flipped over by the sea, and when she woke up again, she found herself in a forest. It was full of lunatics, and their food was problematic. She had been hungry for several days before finding the chance to jump into the sea and escape. Hearing this, Erin panicked. This elf might also be a lunatic. She wanted to persuade her best friend to give up, but Chloe firmly refused. She had to sign her elf before those 3 took action. Since her best friend was so determined, Irene would definitely support her wholeheartedly. They boarded the ship they bought outright and soon saw the island not far away. The clearly ancient flag totem made Irene curious about the situation on the island. Suddenly, a violent dizziness struck, but luckily Felix quickly held her. Being so close face to face made their hearts race like a deer's, so they quickly shyly pulled apart. But then they saw Chloe standing on the deck, reaching out to grab her. Just then the ship shook violently, and when she woke up again, she felt her body was confined, carefully feeling the object in front of her. She recognized the familiar big chest muscles and looked up, leaning forward. Felix's handsome face appeared in front of her, but now was not the time to eat. Struggling to break free, but the man held her too tightly, there was no way to escape, so she could only try to wake him with her familiar sweet scent. The familiar scent made Felix groggily wake up and look at the girl in his arms. He thought it was just a beautiful dream, tightly holding the girl's waist. He buried his head in Irene's embrace, rubbing against her like a little kitten. The weak little flower Jingmi became the ruler of the elf kingdom. And this was her first time. The previously cruel tyrant was in a state of confusion. But just when they stepped onto Elf Island, she almost collapsed from the illusion, although she was a precious treasure in her family's hands. To outsiders, she was nothing but a beautiful doll because she always relied on others. This caused everyone to leave her, and even her brother was completely consumed by the demon. When the main characters captured her and she gave up resisting, she firmly clenched her fists. She swore to herself that she would become stronger, and in an instant, her inner demons dissipated. Releasing her repressed emotions, she forced herself to calm down, raised her hand to call out the name of the spirit, but there was no response. Just when she was about to give up, a sudden light illuminated the path. A beautiful figure slowly approached her, gently taking Chloe's hand and saying, "Child, I've always hoped you would overcome your fear, and you haven't disappointed me. All the difficulties will become the strength that supports you," but Chloe had no time to listen to these words. Right now, she was focused only on signing the contract, wanting to have the power to protect her family. Unfortunately, the woman couldn't agree, although Chloe's magic was vast. Even capable of contracting with the Spirit King, she was not a spirit herself. "But I can take you to find her." They quickly arrived at the destination. Taking off the necklace from her chest, she pointed to the current iron box. "This thing can help you sign a contract with the spirit. I hope you will also take care of her for me." It seemed everything was going smoothly, but little did they know, Aileen and her brother were about to die. Not long after they woke up, two children brought them food and clothes. After changing their clothes, the two easily entered the island's sacred temple. However, due to the demon's presence, the Spirit King was attracted there. At a glance, she saw through Felix's situation and immediately took action to kill. Of course, the man would not sit idly by, using a careful bit of magic to forcibly resist the legendary Spirit King, but in the end, he still couldn't win. Defeated, he fainted, facing the obstructing human girl. The Spirit King did not hesitate and attacked, wanting to kill the two. In an instant, branches tightened around her neck and she thought she was going to die. But unexpectedly, when she opened her eyes, she was lying in Felix's arms. She was about to thank him but saw a stranger's gaze. This person was not Felix. She saw him condense the demon palace, reaching out, aiming at the Spirit King, someone who had once dismissed him. But in an instant, half of his body was destroyed, and only then did he realize something was wrong. However, the next sword was already poised and could not be dodged. With a powerful attack, he was shattered into pieces. Everything finally ended. But Aileen was extremely nervous because Felix now was exuding a terrifying and eerie aura, his red eyes glowing. She thought he was also going to kill Aileen, but he pulled her into his embrace. He originally intended to teach the girl a lesson, but upon seeing her beautiful face, his heart instantly fluttered and he waited to push Aileen away. Seeing her attitude, he was sure this was not Felix. "Where did you hide my man?" She reached out to protect her own purity. This time it was his initiative to trade, exchanging half of his soul for your safety. Tearfully, she thought Felix was going to die and hurriedly stopped her, telling Aileen not to cry. Otherwise, this body would feel pain. She thought it was the demon's conscience reprimanding him. The niece's words almost made the demon die of anger. A mere human was so arrogant. Reaching out, he was about to crush Aileen, but just as he was about to act, he suddenly, uncontrollably, wiped away her tears. Even though their souls were different, his body unconsciously protected her. Just then, Chloe arrived, saying she could now contract with a spirit. Aileen panicked. That guy was killed just now. Chloe was puzzled. As long as there's a heart, he can stay alive. They discussed how to make the spirit appear, and her brother suggested they could stab the heart. The strong sense of incongruity made Chloe suspicious. "You're not my brother, are you?" He knew the past circumstances, though he was angry at what the Elf King had done. But he understood that the other side also had his reasons. This time, he wanted to personally ask, The similar appearance to Felix immediately sparked hostility from the elves. Faced with the unfriendly attitude, he took out his heart to get their attention. As he reached out to grab it, he suddenly saw the sapphire necklace. Let me formally introduce myself. I'm your new master, Claudia. I know that 4,000 years ago. You were resurrected after dying in a Srita, but have you ever thought about why he hasn't seen you? He wanted you to let go of your obsession and leave this place because life is short and death is noble. He wanted to protect you, so he hopes you can be free. Not trapped on this island, we'll be heading home soon. Looking at the familiar yet strange demon beside him, he suggested you should put on the hat. How dare a mere human give me orders? The next moment, Chloe's expression became eerie. Scared, she obediently put on the hat and quickly ran back to her room to avoid trouble. To her surprise, as soon as she opened the door, she saw the long-awaited Aelin. Unexpectedly, the demon Lara asked, "When did you release my angel? Without her, I'd die. Aren't you afraid she'll hear you?" She was instantly panicked, only to be told it was a joke. Speechless and wanting to leave, the next moment a large hand grabbed her. To her shock, Aelin was easily lifted into the air, her face just inches away. Even the demon nearly felt moved, but quickly dropped Aelin to calm down. Suddenly, she remembered that the demon was only a fragment, so technically it wasn't Lara. After all, no one would refer to filth as themselves. To differentiate, she called her Layli instead. A strange feeling surged in her heart. It was clear that Felix loved Aelin, and she was just the demon inside her body. So what was happening now? The cold brother finally made his move. Faced with the challenge from his beloved, he couldn't hold back and kiss the girl. But what should have been a perfect ending was the beginning of their separation. Even though Aelin cried and begged him to stay, Felix never looked back. In fact, from the very first meeting, she had an overwhelming possessiveness toward Aelin. As long as the girl was happy, she would fall deeply in love. No matter what Aelin did, she thought she was cute and beautiful. When Aelin spoke up for Felix, she would even feel happy to the point of heartache. At that time, she felt the sweetest emotions in the world, and Aelin was like a beautiful cat. She always wanted to tame and possess her, but unknowingly. She was the one who was tamed by Aelin because of the deal with the demon. Her humanity was drained, leaving only love and desire for Aelin. She didn't want to hurt Aelin, so she had to run away. Only by leaving could she better protect Aelin, but the man would never know. How much Aelin would suffer. Quickly 2.5 years passed. The crown prince was successfully crowned, and the three of them became the empire's top powers. Chloe grew even stronger, using the elf king's power to gain a very high position, while Aelin spent every day researching potions. She only wanted to solve the demon-devouring issue, and only by immersing herself in work could she ease her longing for Felix, unaware that Felix had already been assimilated by the demon. He had become a war hero feared by all, but also a murderous maniac who deserved to be torn apart. A brutal personality like a walking death god uses a new appearance and name. Successfully earning the emperor's trust, not only did he promote her, but also specifically held a grand celebration banquet, said also received the information, hoping Aelin could attend the banquet and preferably personally try to win her over. Now the two plans were like pieces of a puzzle, and she had a feeling that this person was the key piece. But Aelin was very unwilling. She was truly not good at interacting with men. But faced with the second prince's request, she had no choice but to accept. Since it was an imperial celebration banquet, of course, she had to dress up. Because Chloe was busy with work, she could only invite her younger brother to attend the banquet. But as expected, she still disliked this kind of atmosphere. Fortunately, she saw familiar faces. She skillfully mingled with everyone, and everyone was very curious about the appearance of the war hero. Even Erica felt a bit envious as the crowd discussed. They announced the hero's arrival, and the ladies looked at the door in awe. Black glossy hair, a strong and tall figure. A scar on the face added a murderous aura, although it was a strange face. Aelin could immediately recognize that it was Felix, who had been gone for 3 years. After the banquet, Aelin seemed to have lost her soul. Strange, what's up with my sister's appearance? Curiously, do you know the hero? But Aelin still looked silly, helpless, and could only leave for now. If anything happens, remember to call me. Actually, Aelin didn't have anything major going on. She just couldn't understand why 3 years had caused such a big change. The gentle angel-like brother she once knew had now turned into a demon who kills without hesitation. Although she thought this was impossible, those eyes were definitely Felix's. She had left to protect her family back then, even if she truly had turned into a demon. This time, she must have returned to protect them. The banquet lasted for 3 days. Aelin had numbed herself with alcohol for 3 days, but luckily her brother was there to take care of her. Until she was thrown back onto the bed, Leon finally realized. The reason she was called here was probably to take care of Aelin, seeing her in such a gloomy state. Ultimately, it became a sigh, let Aelin rest well. But she forgot that Ailing was sleeping on her stomach, and the pain became unbearable. She grabbed the gem on her chest, the one Felix had given her back then. Whenever in danger, breaking the gem would summon Felix to save her. But now, after 3 years, the gem might no longer work. With a feeling of trying it out, she loosened her grip on the gem. With gravity slowly pulling it down, the gem shattered into pieces. But nothing happened. She lowered her head in disappointment. With a bitter smile, she tried to comfort herself. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew in. She looked in shock at the windowsill, and the hero she had been waiting for had arrived. The domineering little wife desperately chasing her husband, faced with the lover she hadn't seen for 3 years. Not only did she kiss him first to express her longing, but also threatened the demon inside her. "I will personally kill you to save Felix's life." When the worried man appeared, Ailing looked at him excitedly. Unconsciously, she stood up and moved closer, raising her hand to touch the man. But she trembled all over, wanting to retreat, then suddenly jumped up to hug him. This time I won't let go. The inertia from the impact caused them to fall off the windowsill, but the man tightly protected the girl. Fortunately, neither of them was injured. The girl kept pouring out her longing. She begged the man not to leave this time, but was coldly rejected. "I don't know the person you're talking about, Felix." However, the girl was very firm. Although her appearance had changed, her breathing and even her voice were unchanged. "Please don't leave me this time." He coldly pushed the girl away and insisted that he hated Ailing. But the girl didn't believe him and grabbed the man's collar. "You just protected me with your body earlier. I know you still love me." However, the man had to harden his heart and forcefully push the girl away. "I really hate you. You clearly loved me before." "I've long forgotten that feeling," he said, the words seeming cruel. But the girl heard something else in his words. "So what you're saying is, you did love me before and still want to push me away." "If you dare push me, I'll kiss you," the girl said helplessly, trying to persuade him to leave her alone. But Ailing would never give up. "Even my soul can be yours. I just want you to stay by my side." Suddenly, voices were heard from a distance. To hide their relationship, he could only cover Ailing's mouth, the intimate pose hidden in the grass. After the voices faded away, Ailing wasn't worried about being discovered. She even used her tongue to wet her palm, barely controlling her inner desire. Ailing, however, pressed on. "I know a lot has happened these past 3 years. But you will always be the angel in my heart, so please don't leave again, okay?" Seeing the man still silent, she said, "If you don't answer in 10 seconds, I will kiss you." Ignoring the boy's stunned expression, she slowly leaned in as the countdown began. Finally, she couldn't resist and kissed the girl again, and after 2.5 minutes, their lips slowly parted. She didn't know how to face Ailing. Why did you recognize me?" But this was Ailing's love, right? Even if it was just a fleeting moment. She would still recognize Felix's face. The man's heart was completely in turmoil. He tightly held the girl in his arms. "You're so perfect. How can I ever forget you?" He comforted himself that she belonged only to him, but it was all too late. As the midnight bell rang, the man weakly dropped his arms. When she woke up again, Ailing immediately sensed that something was wrong. "Are you Riley?" Ailing thought it was strange that she was here. But Ailing was equally puzzled. "Where did you hide Felix?" It turned out the two were so deeply connected that every 12 hours, they exchanged consciousness. Riley understood what was going on, but there seemed to be something else to explain. Terrified, Riley quickly explained that Felix, having lost his humanity, only lived because of his love for Ailing and his hatred for the three of them. Struggling with how to restore Felix, Riley even asked the devil before her. Though she didn't want to say it, she couldn't lie to Ailing because of her physical limitations. "As long as I die, he can recover, so would you be willing to die?" Tears instantly flooded her eyes, and she didn't understand why she was crying. But Ailing had no intention of comforting her. Instead, she continued to provoke her with words. Even though Riley begged her tearfully to stop, Ailing still smiled and urged her to die. Riley excitedly pushed the girl to the ground, but Ailing wasn't afraid. She only wanted to save the man she loved. "So Riley, I will definitely kill you." The tempting demon was, however, played with by the girl in her palms. As long as it could save her beloved, she would not hesitate to fall into hell. But in order to protect Felix, she decided to hide the demon for now. "In the end, I was shoved into a pile of stuffed dolls. Strangely, it actually smelled like Aileen. Because I usually hug them to sleep, I was troubled, wondering how to rescue Felix. Otherwise, can you help her? I don't do things without a return." Suddenly, a mischievous thought crossed my mind. "So do you want me to kiss you?" Instantly, I was scared, my face turning red, my heart racing after teasing the demon. I found the long-lost fairy king Irene and expressed my wish to borrow her power. But she directly refused, and I couldn't use my trump card. Smiling maliciously, I threatened her with a heart, but she was already used to this. After all, Aileen always used this kind of thing to threaten her, and she was impatient to get rid of the girl. Who would have thought that she would pass the box to me? Her retreat was ultimately a strategy that made Irene soften. However, as soon as we met, I couldn't bear the self-loathing. Seeing the muscular man who likes stuffed dolls, I felt like my eyes were being polluted. I took the initiative to dig the demon out of the stuffed doll pile. She would need to go to the battlefield soon. Can you make a doll like her? This is very simple for the fairy king. But I was curious who exactly she was when I learned she was Chloe's brother. I immediately thought about Chloe's feelings. This time I'll help you. But you need to tell Chloe in the best way possible. You mustn't let her get hurt. Soon the basic form was done, the rest needed to be carefully repaired. Aylin certainly wouldn't waste any time. She decided to do something big. While the demon was asleep, she wanted to have a serious talk with Felix. Riley firmly opposed it. You're obviously up to no good. He tried to tell Aylin how dangerous Felix was, that she harbored endless desires deep inside. That's something you can't handle, but Aylin didn't care at all. Aren't these desires all triggered by you, so you have no right to say these things? Now go to sleep and release Felix. I have a lot to talk to her about. Listening to Aylin's words, I suddenly felt like my chest was being torn apart. I trembled and asked Aylin what this feeling was. Maybe this is jealousy. Now you have to take responsibility for your choices. But why should she take responsibility? She smiled as she got closer to the man. Because you love me, so from now on, no matter if it's pain or joy, you have to accept it. Instantly there was silence, no objections. I looked at Aylin's expectant gaze. In the end, I obediently lay down, though I didn't know why. I felt like I had returned to hell alone, feeling lonely and desolate. Soon the demon fell asleep, but Aylin became nervous. Should she cry and say how much she missed him, or smile and say something playful? My heart was so nervous that it felt like it was going to explode. Now I had to use my trump card. I quickly used the 8+1 move to strike, but suddenly felt something wrong behind me. Cautiously, I turned around to find the man staring at me intently. You haven't run away yet. That's when I noticed the painful sting in my eyes. Had the demon cried, I awkwardly said it was my doing. She fell in love with me because of your fairy tale, so I harshly dumped her. She has taken all my feelings. It should be more like the old me now. Why did you reject her? But Aylin disagreed. Although you two look alike, you will always be you. My choice has always been only you. Then she took out the gift she had prepared. It was a magic potion named Felix, which when drunk could make someone recall happy memories. Waiting in anticipation for a compliment, though he couldn't understand it now. But still rewarded Aylin with a head pat. You are of course still unsatisfied with this. For the lover who is hard to meet, her heart had already been filled with impulse. She could no longer suppress herself and grabbed the girl's shoulder. This time I won't be soft-hearted anymore, but Aylin had already prepared everything. I know you don't like this, let's skip over the crazy night. By the time they woke up again, their souls had transformed into Lele. Looking at the bottles scattered on the floor, they immediately recognized it as recovery potions. Unexpectedly, Aylin had drunk so many, fearing the girl might have passed out. With some pain, she told the other to calm down, saying she wasn't injured. Just a little tired, but instead of resting, we should go find a doctor. After all, recovery potions can't heal bones, which scared Lele into a cold sweat. Quickly checking to see where the girl had a fracture, without wasting time, he picked up Aylin and set off. Looking at the slightly disappointed Lele, Aylin suddenly called out her name. Apologizing for what she said earlier, admitting it was because she missed Faye so much. But now, after understanding Faye's situation, she would find a way to separate them. Lele was, of course, happy, but she wanted to know, is Aylin happy? After all, Felix's skills came from her, although she was angry that the demon lacked insight. But still, she gave 100 points, satisfied with the recovery. Happily carrying Aylin, leaving behind a back covered in scratches. The lovers finally reached their happy ending, but the large difference in their body sizes left the girl covered in bruises. Fortunately, her ankle was quickly bandaged. She reminded the demon again to say it was just a sprain. The kind Chloe would surely believe, but the demon in front of her didn't respond. Strange, what was he thinking? I want to have my own body. How about turning into a little dog? I would not only feed you, but also take you for walks and even play with you every day. Oddly, she somewhat looked forward to it, but she still had to become human first. And also had to be taller and more handsome than Felix, but even if she would disappear in the end, she still hoped to preserve her love for Aylin. Soon Ellie brought news. Chloe was about to arrive home, and Aylin panicked instantly. Now that the demon was in control of her body, Chloe would surely beat her up. To protect Felix's body, she had to find a few shields. Finally meeting her beloved best friend, but not wanting to see something unpleasant. Why was this guy here, though he was a Duke of the Empire? She was cautious in front of Chloe, only using her eyes to signal Aylin to manage him. After all, she was the one who called him here, thinking for a long time, using the excuse of treating him to lunch. Ha 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 ha, having lunch early in the morning, the second prince was so angry, he almost wanted to kill. Watching Ailing looking scared, why be angry at Ailing? For Ailing, this was normal, it was the second prince's men. Did I really have a problem? Suddenly, I noticed something wrong with Ailing's foot. Reaching out, she lifted her skirt and saw the bandage on her ankle. In a panic, she pushed Ailing down under her body. How did you get injured? I accidentally fell off the balcony because you said I was an angel. So I wanted to try if I could fly. She couldn't stand the ridiculous reason anymore. You better confess soon. She immediately turned her attention to the second prince. I heard you sent Ailing to meet that psychopath, she said coldly, her tone full of danger. Sure enough, Chloe's gaze instantly became cold. It was that water who hurt Aileen, right? He hurriedly grabbed Chloe's sleeve. He knew he couldn't hide it any longer. There's something I must tell you. Felix has returned, but due to the curse, he can't regain consciousness until the sun rises. Meanwhile, inside the palace, the Duke's seal was on the floor, with all the intelligence being about Chloe's inner circle. There was even the deceased Felix, and one glance confirmed that it was all false information. All the information was provided by Seradim, since they dared to use false intel. It meant Aileen had already taken control of this organization. I'm really curious. If it were me, would she change me too? Soon, everything was settled. The doll substitute replaced Felix and continued the hero's story on the battlefield, while the real Felix became the beloved pet of the family. The two began their sweet cohabitation life because Felix had too much strength. He often tore books apart. Aileen had a good solution. She would reach out, take the book, and naturally sit on Felix's lap. I can help you flip the pages, though she forgot how dangerous this posture was. After some ambiguous poses, Aileen's cheeks turned red with nervousness. This guy wasn't even looking at the book, but Felix seemed to know the content of the book and could even match it. The content of the book could match perfectly. Strange, then why bother reading it? It turned out he just wanted to reminisce about the past. I heard you used the potion last time. What did you see? He suddenly fell silent, not speaking. He gently pinched the girl's embroidery. I can't remember clearly. I only remember seeing a cat and recalling the feeling back then. Suddenly, he wanted to hug Aileen but was afraid of breaking her ribs. SHE Chinese letter LY stepped forward and hugged the man. At this moment, she felt a little awkward. She didn't know what to do, so she reached out to grab his arm. All you need to do is praise me. She gazed in awe at the girl in front of him. You're really beautiful, the well-known scheming Duke. Yet secretly a pure little wolf dog. As long as the girl shows some fake tenderness, he would even be willing to become her loyal servant. Aileen had doubts before, but she never expected this guy actually liked her. How could the Duke, the male lead, easily give up the female lead, Chloe? She never expected that he'd target her. Unfortunately, it was all in vain. Aileen hated the Duke, even if he used methods to obtain her body. He would never possess her heart. She had to admit that the Duke was powerful. But how could he defeat the one he personally killed? My soul already belongs to him. I will live on with those memories. She thought these words would make the Duke give up. But Aileen had underestimated her madness. This woman, she would have to possess her. For this purpose, she used the Emperor's power. In an attempt to bring down Chloe's family, she didn't expect the Emperor to be uncontrollable and often act against her. Fed up, she decided to support the second prince, who was addicted to drugs, to make him listen completely. She used drugs to control his mind, thinking she was guaranteed victory. She didn't expect to fall into Aileen's trap. Aileen had already prepared the antidote, a potion that would make the second prince immune to the drugs. Now she successfully split the Emperor and the Duke. Everything was going according to Aileen's plan, but as I said before, Aileen had always underestimated the Duke's madness. She never intended to let the prince live. After all, his body had already been destroyed by the drug. She couldn't trust working with the prince, so she made a deal with the demon. She offered the prince's soul as a sacrifice, ensuring he would fall into eternal sleep. She would become the ultimate winner, the supreme ruler behind the Empire's throne. And Ailing, in order to investigate enemy intelligence, disguised herself as a man for the first time and infiltrated the enemy camp. She discovered the Duke summoning a demon and a terrifying demon's words. The words instantly made her head almost explode, and after a painful scream, she was noticed by the demon on the spot. Perhaps it was due to the influence of the magic. She unexpectedly fainted when she opened her eyes again. Her hands were chained to iron, but fortunately she had taken a transformation potion before entering. She still looked like a man, and she thought she wouldn't be noticed. To her surprise, her identity was immediately exposed. Long time no see, Miss Amber. Ailing wanted to continue playing dumb, believing no one would recognize her. But then the man leaned in close, staring into her unique golden eyes. I'll never forget her face. If you're not Ailing Amber, may I dig her out after you die? In his empty, crazed gaze, it seemed her own terrified reflection was mirrored. With no choice, Ailing awkwardly admitted her identity, but it was strange although the demon had already been summoned. Why did the Duke show no change? Suddenly she remembered something. The second prince, who she often contacted, had suddenly gone missing these past few days. Could it have been this guy's doing? Soon Ailing was helpless. She had planned to escape while the Duke was gone, but unexpectedly they sat face to face for 2 hours. Then the Duke suddenly spoke. "Miss Amber, you can predict the future, can't you?" Although Ailing immediately denied it, the Duke was confident in his belief. After all, if she couldn't foresee the future, everything that had happened so far wouldn't make sense. "And now your expression proves my guess. Ailing Amber, please stay by my side for the rest of your life." Her face immediately turned black with anger, but given her current situation, she couldn't provoke him. She could only gently ask him to think it over. To her surprise, the Duke only smiled even more happily. Though they were enemies, the girl was always so cute. Compared to the vase-like female lead Chloe, he preferred Ailing's clever tactics. This was a land where the strong prey on the weak. Those two noble were easily buried. Your former lover was such a person. Why should one go against their instincts to live? As long as you follow your instincts, life will be much easier. He lowered his head and pressed it to Ailing's forehead. "So will you be with me?" He thought Ailing would finally yield. But unexpectedly, she responded with an international gesture. "I can tolerate everything else. But you should not insult Felix." Seeing this, the man completely lost his patience. He ordered Ailing to prepare for an overwhelming force, shouting that he was a man. He tried to awaken her rationality, but to his surprise, the Duke became even more excited. "I don't care about your gender, I'm fine with either." With no other choice, she could only attempt to resist. Unexpectedly, she really managed to injure the man, shaking her head to clear the chaotic thoughts. She reversed the situation and pressed the Duke to the ground. At that moment, a sinister aura appeared. It was the demon returning. Knowing she couldn't deal with the demon, especially with the threat of the sealed Duke, she had no choice but to release her grip. She elegantly dusted off her clothes and spoke. "Tell me what happened." It turned out that the female lead Chloe had teamed up with the guard Waddle. At the banquet, she publicly rebelled and took the emperor hostage. Also, Chloe's way of addressing that dark-skinned knight was brother, such a familiar term. "Felix, former Baron Baran, I didn't expect you to still be alive." In order to help the female protagonist escape the three scheming female villains, she actively provoked the scheming male protagonist. But unexpectedly, she captured the man's heart in order to monopolize the female villain. He played games of confinement with her every day, but after the girl unexpectedly escaped, the male protagonist completely lost his mind to capture the female villain back. She was willing to make a deal with the devil as long as she could get the girl back. Even if the world were to be destroyed, she didn't care. The spreading dark energy instantly caused panic among the people, shouting for Illy to take action. The gentle energy gathered and instantly purified the contaminated poison. But her powers could no longer be used. Soon, people were invaded by the dark energy. She used magic to heal the civilians, though her body was somewhat drained. She had to keep going as she looked at the huge gap in the sky. Chloe knew someone had summoned the devil, so she had to knock the emperor unconscious, then take the citizens to the shelter while her brother acted alone. He went to find the source of the demon's summoning when the midnight bell rang. Relai's soul regained control of her body, but this time she clearly felt something was wrong. It turned out that in order to separate from the demon, Felix had drunk the soul separation potion in advance. Now her soul was breaking free from Relai's control. All her beliefs and feelings could be returned. But the one thing she didn't want to forget was Ailing because of Felix's feelings. The demon had completely fallen in love with Ailing, just thinking about how the girl only belonged to Felix, and how she would disappear from her world. Tears couldn't stop falling. But soon she found hope once she and Felix had made a pact. After separating their souls, Relai would get a new body, but there was a flaw in this plan. It didn't exclude Felix's body, and that was Relai's chance. She planned to steal Felix's body and take the girl far away. But all of these thoughts vanished when she met Ailing. She had completely failed as a soul fragment. She had come to the human world to become a complete demon, but she had fallen in love with Ailing. Even if she obtained a new body, it meant nothing to her. What was more important was that she really didn't want to forget what Ailing looked like. Leaning on Ailing's shoulder, she was terrified that she would just disappear. Gently holding the man's hand, "I will never forget you. I will always remember a demon named Relai who once deeply loved me." Relai suddenly understood why she had fallen in love with the other person, and because of that, she had to send Ailing away from here, from the current state of contamination. The summoned being was definitely a high-level demon. The only way was for Ailing to escape first. She would stay behind to protect the girl. "Don't worry, Felix's soul will definitely be safely sent back." Unbelievable, she stared, asking, is there really no other way? Looking at Ailing's anxious expression, she spoke again, offering a deal. I want you to live well, so I will protect your loves. But in return, please promise to always remember me. The Duke made a request to the demon. I will find you a human who will bow down before you. But you must help me retrieve Ailing. However, the demon refused the proposal. What she wanted was the Duke's soul. After all, a deliciously evil soul like yours was rare even in hell, a powerful demon feared by the world, but secretly a pure love warrior, trying to occupy even the tiniest place in the girl's heart. He even chose to die for her. She used the demon's sword to forcibly create an escape route and leave Ailing behind. Stepping on the shattered remnants of me like stars, I don't wish to receive your love. I only hope you'll always remember my pure love, but the Duke mocked me as foolish. Clearly a demon, yet you choose self-sacrifice. He threatened that Rayleigh would devour Felix's soul. Maybe he'd let her off the hook, but Rayleigh was highly disdainful. I promised Ailing I would ensure Felix's safe return. Seeing this, the Duke stopped talking. After all, Ailing hadn't run far, and I still had to go catch her. Just as Rayleigh tried to stop him, boundless magic suddenly gathered in front of him. The Duke provocatively said goodbye, and then his figure gradually disappeared. Replacing him was the terrifying clown demon Nebas. Meanwhile, Ailing was still running. She wouldn't let Rayleigh die. Even if the sky were to fall, she would find an exit to survive. But no matter how far she ran, she couldn't escape the grip of the story. Was it true that no matter how much she struggled, the tragic fate would only be corrected? Suddenly, a large hand wrapped around her waist. I've caught you. At first, he intended to gently catch the girl and take her back. But the disoriented girl bit his arm and slapped him hard. At that moment, her demonic nature was revealed. He grabbed the girl, preparing to continue imprisoning her. He threatened the girl, saying she wouldn't escape again, hearing the Duke's muttering. Ailing's mind suddenly cleared, perhaps because the Duke was the demon's summoner. She was not affected by his evil aura. Now she needed to think calmly. Even for everyone's sake, she couldn't just follow the tragic fate. Suddenly, a black hole appeared before her. Curiously, she poked the hole, which seemed to be the exit she had been searching for. Although it looked a bit dangerous, it was better than being captured and imprisoned by this madman. She'd rather take a chance, taking advantage of the Duke's inattention. She suddenly lunged toward the black hole, seeing the Duke's surprised expression. Even if I die, I will not let you have your way. Meanwhile, on the other side, Rayleigh was completely no match for the clown. She didn't understand why such a lowly minion was so powerful. Even stranger, her soul fragments were absorbed by the opponent. Was this really Neba's? Suddenly her cheek was slashed by an attack. She immediately sensed a familiar scent, and it was indeed true. You're not Neba's. Seeing this, the opponent stopped hiding. Magic gathered as the figure began to change, and the person before her was none other than the legendary demon Rayla. She didn't understand why she was in the human world. It turned out that the clown had already been absorbed by Rayla, and this time she came to absorb Rayleigh's power. You are my sword. Your world exists because of me. This time I will destroy it. When I first brought you to the human world, it was so you could understand humans. But you became infatuated with them. Now you are unworthy of being a demon. But Laylee no longer cares about the little things with Ailing that once existed. She is now Laylee, her true essence no longer a fragment of Sister Lara. So you don't have the right to take me back. The Lara you know is no more nonsense. She reached out, intending to kill Lay, listening to the incantations coming from Laylee's mouth. Arrogantly, she didn't care and casually pierced through Laylee's body. I can absorb you without any pain. It's not too late for you to return now. But Laylee laughed and refused, releasing a terrifying blast of energy. Laylee instantly lost the ability to move, grabbing the man's head with one hand. My fragments. Do you have any objections? She reached out and grabbed his arm. I am Laylee, not a part of you. Without further rebuttal, she pierced through the man's head. Just as she was about to leave, countless chains wrapped around Sister Lara. A pillar of light descended from the sky, cutting off her contract with the mortal world. Since demons need contracts to control magic, she temporarily lost her powers. She had to admit that this time Laylee won. At this moment, the man's dignity, Felix's soul, was returning to its rightful place. The lost lover finally returned, and the first thing she had to do was to take revenge for the girl. As the soul slowly ascended, Felix's appearance began to change, her forehead covered in pain. Soon she accepted all the memories and grabbed Sister Lara's collar. Darkly she asked, where is Ailing? Sister Lara didn't answer, only looking in the distance. Perhaps that person knows. The Duke at this moment looked shocked. It turned out that after Ailing entered the black hole, the Duke had thought it was Neba's causing trouble and was preparing to question the demon. But unexpectedly, during the journey, the contract was destroyed, and he almost suffocated from the demonic energy. Fortunately, he met a fleeing paladin and with sheer willpower he made it here. To his surprise, he saw his old enemy resurrected, and even more terrifying, he saw a demon he'd never encountered before. At this moment, he understood everything since the beginning, summoning the demon. He had already been deceived by this person. He originally wanted to escape amidst the chaos. But the paladin still wanted to struggle against the dangerous Felix. He was about to strike to try and kill her when the violent magical power erupted in an instant. He was instantly bound and unable to move, though Felix's temperament was gentle. She had her limits once Ailing was threatened. She would make the other person pay with their life, so Sister Lara, do you understand? Quickly tell me where Ailing is, or I won't let you off easily. Sister Lara, however, watched him with great interest. She didn't care about Felix's threat. Although she was curious, if something happened to Ailing, what would this man do? But the gods should stop such things. Ailing should now be in the dimensional rift. Without further hesitation, she reached out and directly shattered the space. Watching Felix charge into the rift without hesitation, Sister Lara couldn't help but feel some emotion. If Felix were an ordinary person, perhaps Layli would have completed her mission. Now that the threatening opponent had left, her gaze shifted back to the two of them. Demons are demons because they are selfish beings, who will use everything except themselves to find a shortcut to the peak. The closer you get to success, the easier it is to fall suddenly, just like you now. Then let's sign a contract again, but the Duke was about to refuse. A hand forcefully inserted into his chest, the demonic face showing a calm demeanor. Now you can beg me, just you, at this moment in the dimensional rift. Ailing also met Sister Layla. It turned out she had fulfilled the gods' requirements. So she could control this world with her avatar's consciousness, and Ailing was brought in by her. Although she was very surprised, there were more important matters now. Please help me, your shard is disappearing now. Right now, only you can help her, it's me who made Layli disappear. However, I can tell you that your lover is still safe and sound. Ailing was curious about Layli's situation, but she didn't want to harm her. Where is she now? After all, you called her Layli and you obviously have strong feelings for her. Unexpectedly, the girl's intuition was so sharp, it was true that Layli had disappeared. But whether she was safe or not depended on whether I could save her. The lovers finally reunited, and Ailing's time travel mystery was also unraveled. She was brought into the novel world by the god and made a deal with the demon. This allowed Sister Layla to fulfill Ailing's wish for revenge, which was now in the dimensional world. Although Ailing knew she was a character in a novel for her, she truly existed in the dimensional world, just like the space in her hand now. It was independent of the external world, a new world. She had initially wanted to use this space to find some fun. But because she needed to save Layli, she had no choice but to use the world's power. The chattering figure seemed to be a kind old father. Fortunately, Layli was her shard and could finally live independently. Suddenly, she remembered the sealed duke and hurriedly inquired about his situation. That man, I re-signed a contract with him. In order to regain my power, I carefully took out his hearts. Then I politely proposed a plan. Should we sign a contract so I can revive him? He quickly agreed, thinking there was a powerful demon in the outside world. Ailing immediately had a bad feeling and nervously inquired about the situation in the outside world. I've regained my power a long time ago, but I haven't done anything. After all, I'm not interested in ruling the world. It's just because the child misbehaved and I sacrificed myself. To revive him, I had to regain my power, and I really want that guy's soul. Constantly tormenting him in hell will definitely be fun. Though scary, I can finally relax. I'm curious when I can leave, but unexpectedly, Sister Layla firmly refused. I must follow the will of the external world's original body. The original body seems not to want you to meet your lover. But didn't the god want you to fulfill my wish? After an awkward silence, that was my agreement with the original body of the external world. Ailing was truly going mad. How could there be such an overbearing demon? There's no choice but to stay calm and think, maybe I should just beat her up. As a black belt expert, perhaps I can break the world with one punch. Just as she was about to strike, the attack behind her suddenly cracked. She turned around in surprise and saw the figure of Felix appear. As she slowly approached, a dragon's phantom appeared behind her. Shocked, Ailing looked at the unfamiliar yet familiar man. Are you really Felix? The large hand gently brushed the girl's face. Lynn, I'm sorry I'm late. Looking at the aggrieved girl in front of her, her face was full of affection. Suddenly, her expression darkened with pain as she looked at the wound on the girl's face. Did this guy hurt you? Quickly explain what happened. At this moment, Sister Layla also understood. Those allowed to stay by Ailing's side would get everything they desired. Layli, because of helping Ailing, was allowed by the god to be revived, and Felix even gained the power of a dragon. As long as the god's will and Ailing's desires remain unchanged, this will be the eternal law of the world. And Ailing would also be able to influence the world's direction. Layli would soon be reborn as a demon. If she were to be taught the skills of tempting humans, would she try to tempt this woman? This thought seemed to be noticed by Felix. He warned Sister Layla not to act recklessly or else he wouldn't let her off. As the rift slowly closed, everything seemed to have settled. She understood that she was in the novel world, but are you all real on the outside?